Hey, how's it going there, folks? Welcome back here to a Wednesday night. It is the Earthmaster here on this March 13th date, 2024, about 9:50 p.m. here, California time. Hopefully the audio's working good. Apologize about that video earlier. Not for sure what happened, but had about 3 minutes or so of some crazy sound here on this end from my audio. But I think we're working good now. All right. 4.3, the latest earthquake here into the area around Costa Rica. Looks like getting some cluttering going on there in terms of earthquake activity. Let's go ahead and check this out on the latest map here from the USGS as we're looking at some activity along the west coast here. And, well, let's start off here in northern Nevada, getting a little swarming going on up here once again outside the Sheldon study area. I was up here a few years back, investigating an earthquake swarm. Looks like that's starting to kick back up here once again. Seeing about 5 earthquakes or so in the last 24 hours, but over the last week or so, we've seen a handful more of earthquakes out here. There's quite a bit of old volcanic features out there, a lot of ancient signs of volcanic activity. A couple too stirring up out there today. Very shallow earthquake activity there in northern Nevada. Kind of watching that, seeing if that's going to pop up in anything as far as like a major swarm goes. Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens, a handful of smaller quakes up here in Washington. Nothing major going on for now, but 2 earthquakes there. One around Mount St. Helens and one up at Mount Rainier, one at Mount St. Helens here. So, again, nothing major going on, just a little bit of smaller earthquake activity. Northern California, aside from the Clear Lake volcanic field, the Bay Area looks fairly quiet. A little bit of movement outside Reno area. Not seeing any major swarming going on for now. And one earthquake here along the west side of the San Joaquin Valley here near Coalinga. 2.5 coming in. Southern California, pretty quiet for now. We did have one earthquake right smack dab on the southern branch here of the plate boundary. That was a 2.2 coming in 13 kilometers deep here on the San Andreas Fault. So kind of watching that. Just kind of an eerie day here today. We're seeing earthquake activity. Pretty much some decent activity here today. It all kind of started off with a 6-pointer out here around Papua New Guinea about 8 o'clock this morning. And we've seen, some decent movement work its way across the Indonesia Islands area and now across the Java Trench region. All this activity kicking up here following that 6-pointer. So definitely seen some adjustment take place in this area. Also, if you look down south here, south of Australia, 5.5 coming in down here across the southeast Indian Ridge. That is on the plate boundary here. Remember, let's see if we can pull up the last 30 days. We've seen a handful of large events out here on the southern part of this plate boundary, just south of New Zealand, 6.7, and another 6 in there as well. That kind of migrated over here across the area to the west along the plate boundary. So things are still kind of, looking interesting here for a New Zealand perspective because they really haven't moved as much as I would expect for this much activity around the region here of the plate boundary. USGS reporting a 2.9 here near South Shore, New Zealand. That does look like it's just out of the Christchurch area, 16 kilometers deep. Now, we have been seeing quite a bit of deeper activity underneath the North Island area here recently with quite a bit of, as I mentioned, quite a bit of deeper activity. Some surface adjustment going on here recently as well. But I'm still expecting something here on the larger size, above a 4 or 5 in this region. Could be possibly bigger here. Just due to all the plate stress that has been taking place around it. We've watched a lot of activity up here around the Tonga Trench, some deep movement, a lot of adjustment here across the Kermadec Trench. Deep activity underneath North Island here. This is a subduction zone with the Hikurangi subduction zone. And all that activity around the Macquarie Island and more recently that activity on the globe here, that 5.5 down in this region, a divergent zone. And so, one would expect that things should adjust here accordingly with everything else adjusting around it, but we really haven't seen it. That's why I still think we should be seeing some movement here across New Zealand far as on the larger size of things. Hopefully that's not the case, but things they need to adjust out here. So we did start it off this morning with a 6-pointer. That was followed up by a 5.8. There is a 5.8 in there around the Molucca Sea. And then we watched this throughout the afternoon work its way here across the plate boundary of the Java Trench. So a lot of stress, a lot of momentum following that big quake there this morning, that 6-pointer around Papua New Guinea. So aside from this area, watching New Zealand, we still have not seen... Is that another 3-pointer coming in? As we speak. This is like the second day in a row of speaking things into existence here. Maybe I better go play a lottery ticket or two, or spit out some numbers. Maybe somebody can play the lottery for me. But looks like there's another earthquake coming in here to the area of New Zealand. 300 kilometers deep, although that looks like it's along the Kermadec Trench off the North Island coast. So either way, just still goes to show you that we're watching some further potential down here across the area. There's some deeper movement quakes there in the, or at least one, the 4.7. USGS not reporting that up there, so kind of odd. But a 4.7 earlier earlier this morning, about 544 kilometers deep. So watch New Zealand. Still got a quiet area in between here. I said to watch Papua New Guinea here eastward along the last couple videos. But we've got that filling in here now, but there's still a large segment here across the plate boundary that has not seen any adjustment, roughly about Solomon Islands through the Vanuatu area and up into Fiji for some surface adjustment. It's been awfully quiet there recently, but man, New Zealand, I'm really surprised it hasn't moved yet. Not a whole lot of activity here across the subduction zone of the Mariana Trench and the Izu Trench. That's absolutely quiet. That's quite rare. And the Japan and the Kuril Kamchatka, hopefully I pronounced that correctly. I've been getting a lot of corrections here, but I've always pronounced it the Kamchatka. Now you guys got me saying it wrong. Normally I just spit it out and that's it. Kamchatka. I think that's correct there. If not, well, I'll have to work on it a little bit later. But yeah, pretty quiet up there for now across that subduction zone. Let's see what we got here. There was a 5.8, that earthquake coming in just a couple hours following that 6-pointer. A couple other quakes north here, but you got to remember on the Earthquake 3D globe, we've been watching that as well, scoot across the Java Trench. Likely that we could see some further earthquake activity further north here along the plate boundary, so we'll have to watch that. But main regions, X marks the spot there across New Zealand and the Vanuatu area. Hawaii seeing a little bit of earthquake activity out here, including one in the last hour. It looks like a 2.3, about 30 kilometers deep here into the underneath this area, the Pahala area. This is a common earthquake swarm. Been ongoing here since the 60s or so, 1960s. I've been kind of studying it. It's just always deep earthquake activity down there, around 30 to 35 kilometers in this area. A little bit more active here at the surface levels of the Kilauea volcano here recently as well. Looks like about 19 earthquakes in the last 24 hours. So let's go see what's going on here through the USGS.gov site. Volcanoes/Kilauea. All right, which currently sits at a yellow advisory. The tilt meter station out here fairly equal and level. Not really seeing any major uptick. There was a little dip here in the inflation chart, this tilt meter, but I'm not for sure if that was maybe a technical error. But we can't really find any earthquakes relating to that dip there in the graph. Far as earthquake activity, it's mostly occurring here south, just to the east of the southwest rift zone here. Let's see if I can pull up a local nearby seismograph station. Well, see if this one works. Oh, that's the tilt meter. Seismograph station here. There's definitely some earthquake activity out here. A little bit more active than normal. Some of these events look like some type of fluid movement, magma movement, at least on that one. Let me see what else we got here. See if I can find that same signature. maybe a little bit here. Could be some magma movement going, rolling underneath the ground there. Subsurface areas definitely seen some earthquake activity uptick, and again, it looks like maybe some type of fluid movement taking place out here. Again, that's at the Kilauea Volcano on the Big Island. Seismograph station down here, not so active, but we'll watch it, right? There's a lot of stuff to watch right now, a lot going on out here in the world, and so much overdue, right? If you really think about it, there's so much stuff that's overdue in terms of big ones and big earthquakes. A lot. All right, let's see what's going on here. All right, backing out of here, let's check out the states here real quick. I don't think we got too much else going on out here. Yellowstone seeing a little bit of activity. Looks like a little handful of quakes there around Mammoth. So let's go check it out, see what's going on here. Looks like most likely, ooh, what do we got? Little earthquake swarm kicking up here, it looks like. Notice that here in the last 5 or 6 hours or so. Some type of earthquake activity stirring up out here. Maple Creek. That's a handful of decent quakes. Not big quakes, but as you can see, they're clustering going on. But we also got wind events stirring up out there as well. I believe this is wind, and I am going to double check that just for verification through the windy map. Wind gust. Certain areas up there around Yellowstone, looks like 30-mile-per-hour gust or so, maybe some higher around certain areas. And that was at 10. Let's go back a couple hours here. So it looks like this has been a kind of a longer duration wind event out here across the Yellowstone area, which would coincide with this these readings. So not all the stations are showing it, but the ones that are exposed out there to the elements are definitely showing some of the wind events. So kind of hard to see how much earthquake activity is actually stirring up here in the background of this environmental noise. But there's a handful of quakes, and it does look like the USGS is picking up on them. Again, nothing big. Looks like the largest is going to be this 1.6 earlier this afternoon. And I think that's going to be this one right here. And as you can see, there's a handful of smaller quakes in there as well. But we'll check back on this tomorrow and see if we can't get a clearer view in terms of potential earthquake activity out there. One little lonesome earthquake down in the Ocotillo region of California. Looks like that's off of the Elsinore Fault. So just kind of watch it, folks. Again, as I keep saying, you know, there's so many spots that are overdue in terms of big earthquake activity. It's just... never know. One may trigger another one 1,000 miles away as far as big activity goes. All right, clustering going on here across the Middle America Trench south into the Costa Rica area. Getting some decent earthquake activity here along the Peru-Chile Trench, centered right about the northern Chile area up here in the Bend. See that? Got some activity stirring up. 114 kilometers deep earlier this morning. That has triggered a swarm of activity upstream here. Remember, the deeper activity does add strain up at the subduction zone level itself. Been saying that for a very long time, and this is a simple case of where it where it shows that it's legit here. 114 kilometers deep, right? And then sometime later, it doesn't always happen, but we'll notice that. And obviously, there's a decent swarm of shallower earthquake activity being triggered now in this spot due to the deeper activity down into the subduction zone of the Peru-Chile Trench. So we'll watch that. That's a pretty decent swarm there. This area can see some mega quakes out here. Big time quakes. The Atlantic Ocean looks pretty quiet. Really not seeing anything out there. We did have some decent movement. A 5-pointer stirring up out here in a kind of an odd zone. 5.4 earthquake in this area. It's been a little while since I've seen any earthquake activity specifically within this region here. But historical data does look like we have seen a little bit, but really not that big. So a little odd earthquake activity in this area of the world. Kind of north of where that decent earthquake swarm was taking place here. You guys remember last week or so. So there's definitely something bigger brewing out here in this region. That earthquake swarm has kind of calmed down there across the Greece area, but it does look like we're seeing elevated activity north, including some smaller quakes following that 5.3 earthquake in this area. I mean, obviously, it looks like. That's not a large earthquake, 5.4, but it does look like it is up there on the charts, so to speak, in terms of the pager system. So, like any other spot out here, we'll continue to watch that. But definitely some larger movement out there taking place. The Atlantic Ocean, again, I said, is very quiet. Let's go up to Iceland and see what's going on up here. I don't think there's a lot going on, but we'll double check, see what's going on. 186 earthquakes, and that includes the negative ones up here, if you include all of these. But far as the positive events go, it looks like most of the activity is spread out all over the place. We did see a 2.9 here across the rift zone. Around, it looks like central Iceland there. Some activity underneath Grindavik and just north here, a 2.1. That earthquake about 5 kilometers deep or so. So we'll continue to watch that. Definitely has been somewhat elevated out here locally to the Grindavik region. And that's not a good sign, because that means potentially that things are magma's being pushed around the area further south than what we have seen recently. Most of the activity has been near the Slingerfell and the Hagafell region up northeast of Grindavik, and now we're starting to notice further activity south around the original magma intrusion area, which, if you guys remember, is a line of activity stretching offshore underneath Grindavik and pointing towards the northeast here. So still always that concern that things will be a worst case scenario there and see eruptive activity open up around Grindavik. Latest update was put out March 12th, it looks like. Still stating here that there's a continued increased likelihood of an eruption. It's been saying that for the past couple weeks here. The volume of magma beneath the Svartsengi continues to increase, which could result in a new dike intrusion and possibly an eruption. Hopefully, we're not seeing that right now with all this activity scooting further south. An eruption could occur with very short notice, possibly less than 30 minutes, but for the most part, prior to every eruptive event so far, we've seen a large duration of earthquakes there take place to wherever the fissure activity is opening up. Literally hundreds of earthquakes, and then within a half an hour, the eruptive activity opens up. The most likely eruption site is between the Storastagafell and the Hagafell region, but there's still always some concern about the Grindavik region. This update was put out. Let me see, when was this? Is this from? Let me click on it here real quick, see what's going on. I guess this is their most recent update as far as the zones out here. Got Grindavik down here in Zone 4, which this is huge. Let's bring this down a little bit so we can see what's going on. Zone 4 consists here of sinkholes, fault movements, and lava flow. But again, remember, eruptive activity could take place down here as well. That's the worst case scenario. We've seen that just north of the Grindavik region in the January 15th eruptive activity. So, it's not completely safe out there in this area. the main region where these guys are going to think that the eruptive activity is going to take place is in the zone 3. And of course that includes the areas of previous eruptive activity that we've seen here recently. Remember, key to watching this is the earthquake activity, and there's no major earthquake activity out there, but we're definitely seeing some elevated activity specifically around the Grindavik region. So let's see here. What else do we have? New Zealand. Goodness, it does look pretty active down there. Let me go over here to the GeoNet site here to see what's going on. Hopefully everything's still good, still live. Audio still good. I bumped up the audio a little bit here. I had a couple of folks tell me it was a little bit quieter than what it was last night. So bumped it up a little bit. I just don't want to get it too overblown. There's that 3.4 just outside of the Christchurch area, South Island, New Zealand, about 10 kilometers deep. Prior to that, looks like a 3-pointer up here, North Island. And we really have to bring the all magnitudes in here to see some of the deeper activity that's being triggered underneath the North Island area. There's a 1.9, a 1.7, 167 kilometers deep. You know, we're just getting a lot of deeper activity being triggered in this zone. And it's been an area along the plate boundary that really has not seen any sufficient adjustment here accordingly. While everything else is moving around it, it makes sense that we should see activity here soon. All right, let's see what else we got out here. Let's go check out space weather, see if anything is of interest out here. Looks like we're getting a little blackout, data blackout, at least on one of the graphs there. We did see a little sea flare activity popping up here, so let's go see what's going on with these sunspots. Looks like it's mainly coming off of the western limb there from the departing sunspot, which has been, it's been facing us here for quite a while. This is going to be 3599, which is way out here. The most recent image, will show this sunspot region looking quite complex, and it is shooting off some sea flare activity, but that will be out of sight, out of mind by tomorrow's update. We're left with a whole lot of separated cores out here. I had my hopes up out here for this sunspot, but we're looking at a distance here between the two central cores, and it doesn't look like it wants to advance anymore in terms of complexity. Now, 3590, you guys remember 3590, the source of the large X-flare activity, the largest X-flare activity we've seen this solar cycle. It's still out there on the far side of the sun, and it should be coming around the bend here as far as the eastern limb in the days ahead. We're getting closer and closer. We should start to see some of it out on the eastern limb here with the UV filter that we use on the solar data, but it still looks like it's existing. And we'll have to watch that. I'm not for sure how active it is, but it does look like things, it could come back around again and maybe provide us with some further flaring. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. 3590 will come back around, and of course it will be renamed. As far as the auroras go for right now, there's not a whole lot, folks, unfortunately. I had someone mention here, and I normally don't bring up negative comments here, but I do read all the comments. I may not reply to everyone, but I had someone mention here that how I'm always saying, man, I really wish we could see some flaring, large CME activity, Earth directed. A lot of people are misinformed on the effects of a large CME, right? If we get a large CME Earth directed, the coolest thing we're going to see is auroras, right? A lot of people would love to see the auroras right now. It's a very common thing, very natural thing. It's not a doom and gloom event. But someone had mentioned here that I'm hoping for disasters. I'm not hoping for disasters. When I say I hope for a CME or a large flare Earth directed, Well, for one, there's a couple different things. The scientific data here, right, and the relationship between earthquake activity and space weather events. On large events, that gives me another chance here to compare the two relationships between earthquakes and space weather activity. When there's nothing going on, I'm just sitting here with a data book on the side here that I keep track and not filling in any data. So that's one reason why I would like to see further larger events. Second one is just because the auroras are awesome to see, I'm sure. I would love to see them down into the Northern California area. Unfortunately, it would take a little bit larger event, but we're not going to see any disastrous end of the world type event. I replied to the individual that left a comment on one of my videos recently, and there's always going to be negative people, negative Nancy's, negative whoever that leave these comments here, but I just I don't get it sometimes. I don't get it. But I replied to that person, if that person is watching. I don't hope for disasters. I just like to observe and report on the scientific data that takes place during these large events. Certainly don't want a big earthquake to happen or a massive solar. Well, I don't know what it would take to shut down, like the internet and a bunch of other stuff out here. It'd probably have to be like an EMP or something. Why would I want that to happen? Because then, guess what? The Earthmaster goes dark. The channel goes offline. Nobody can access anything. Why would I want that? So, that person kind of put words in my mouth here, and not cool. But it just goes to show you, I read every single comment. All right, so no doom and gloom. Unfortunately, no auroras. For that to happen, we have to have CMEs Earth-directed, or at least a major coronal hole or a large filament eruption, and there's really not a whole lot out there for that. Moving on. Current day one outlook out here. Man, seen a lot of tornadoes out there in Kansas today. Let me check out the storm reports here, which is right here. So, these are the storm reports as of right now. This could get filled in overnight and tomorrow. But we had about 3 reports of tornadoes. I seen a couple storm chasers here, not going to mention names on YouTube, but they were live streaming it, and pretty decent out there, pretty decent looking tornadoes. Did see, I didn't see a lot of damage out there. Doesn't mean there wasn't any, but those tornadoes were photogenic, that's for sure. A lot of wind reports, major hail reports. I think the hail was the main threat out here today. A large hatched area that was being reported here from the Storm Prediction Center. So they had that just about right there, that 5% zone, and that wind and hail threat in this area is right about where all these storm reports are taking place. So I think they did a good job on that. So we'll check it out tomorrow, see if they add any further reports, but there was definitely some confirmed tornadoes out there. Law enforcement, public officials, and also, of course, the YouTubers out here doing a bunch of storm chasing. So pretty crazy. That will continue, it looks like, through the night. Far as day 2 goes, this is day 2 for Thursday. This is for Thursday. That shifts down here a little bit to the southeast. A huge area. This is a giant area of severe weather potential, including a large 5% and 2% zone. So it's very important, folks, to stay weather aware out here. Wind is going to be a huge threat as well. A lot of inflow, maybe outflow, strong damaging winds. And look at this huge hail threat. So baseballs maybe flying out of the air tomorrow in this area. Keep your car underneath the carport. That's a must out there tomorrow if you're out here in this zone. Goodness. Here is the numerical model. Of course, the current ongoing activity out here associated with the low pressure. We got some colder air coming back behind this system as well. There is the severe weather threat tomorrow. Again, notice a lot of precipitation, a huge band of severe weather threat. Colder air dipping down into the Colorado area. Denver going to get a bunch of snow out there. Four Corners as well. And California, though, is going to dry out. Look at that. There's not a whole lot on the forecast there for California. Got a little system, a little clipper system down here in Southern Cal, roughly about the end of March, that will potentially bring some rain down there. But again, this is a ways out here. I don't really like looking at too much data that's way out there, but it's kind of neat to look at and see if trends follow one another. But yeah. All right, so we'll just kind of see what happens out here. Deeper activity into the Izu Trench. I was just talking about that. How we haven't seen any activity out there. We got a 4.4 coming in, 335 kilometers deep here into the northern edge of the Izu Trench. Again, watch New Zealand. You know, it's very active out here, folks. Can't really pinpoint exactly where things are going to take place, but you got to look at some of these quiet zones. Look where potential stress builds up here with the plate boundaries and the adjustment that takes place out here accordingly. Where the momentum is headed, it's definitely a full-time job in itself, watching all this activity and trying to figure everything out. All right, folks, have a good night, have a good day, have a good morning, wherever you're at. Thank you for watching here on the channel. If you're not a subscriber, jump on board, guys. We do have the member drawing coming up here in 2 days. 2 days, our member drawing is coming up once again. So we'll be going live here on the channel on a separate live stream to give away some prizes here to the members. I'm not for sure how many we got. We got a pretty big jump this month, but we'll go over that a little bit later. We'll give a shout out here to the members tomorrow morning. Been forgetting to do that, but either way, if you're not a member, jump on board. And I got to get a new fishbowl. The wind, I had it outside sitting on something, and the wind actually blew it off today, and it is made of glass, so it landed on my cement awning area here, and it shattered the fishbowl. So I'm a little sad. I've had that for a long time, and we've done plenty of drawings through that fishbowl, so I'll have to get me maybe I'll get me a plastic one this time. Either way, we'll be doing the member drawing here in 2 days, the 15th, every single month. Been doing it for almost 2 years now. We'll give away some prizes. All right, folks, we'll catch you guys back out here tomorrow morning. Have a wonderful evening and stay safe out there. Be prepared. We'll catch you later.